Hi guys, I did my assignment on the Chicano Movement. The Chicano Movement can really be described as the Mexican American civil rights movement. This movement was a movement in which Mexican Americans defined and took pride in their own identity, asserted their own civil rights, and worked towards self-determination by improving their financial, social, and political circumstances. The Chicano movement took place in the late 1960s and the early 1970s. It started in the state of Washington, but really thrived in California. The Chicanos really had three main goals in mind. The first was to gain rights for farm workers. The second was to gain political reform. And the third was to restore the land of the Mexican Americans. The Chicano movement created many cause and effects in Mexican American culture and helped shape California's and Mexican Americans' historical significance. Things were not good for the Chicanos during this time. They mostly lived in barrios, which was filled with police brutality. Their schools were very underfunded, and it was filled with unemployment. The Mexican Americans did not have a voice during this time. Los Angeles City Councilman Edward Roybal was elected to Congress, which led to Mexican Americans without any representation in their council. This resulted in Mexican Americans to lose their rights to their own cultural, language, heritage, and their own way of life. The Chicanos sought to establish a third political party that would help Mexican Americans regain the rights that they had lost. This party would be known as the Raza Unda Party, also known as RUP. Even though RUP failed in its initial efforts to make the barrios a better living situation, it did pave the way for Chicanos to enter the political arena. The next problem that the Chicanos faced was the fight of the restoral of land. This started because the United States didn't honor the Treaty of Guadalupe. The Treaty of Guadalupe stated that the Mexican landowners would be able to keep their property that was lost in the late 1840s. Their land was lost because the Mexican territory was seized in an unprovoked and unjustified war, stripped established residents of their land, and transformed once proud people into poorly paid menial labor forces. Reyes Lopez Chirgina was a spokesman for this issue. He created the land grant movement. Chirgina fought to convince the federal government to honor the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. In conclusion, the Chicanos, a new generation of Mexican American activists, declared California belonged to La Raza and gained all of the land back to their rightful owners. Lastly, the Chicano movement focused on the exploitation of Mexican American migrant farm workers. These farm workers were faced with long hours in the heat, no vacation time, and they were exposed to poisonous pesticides at work that led to countless health issues. This was just a portion of what farm workers had to go through during this time. This led to the NFWA, the National Farm Workers Association, that was founded in 1962 by Dolores Huerta and Cesar Chavez in California. The NFWA then later became the United Farm Workers, also known as the UFW. They protested unfair labor with strikes, boycott, and pilgrimages. Although the NFWA and the UFW failed to bring reform to the Mexican American workers, but it did later on lead to the termination of the barrio program. The end of the barrio program left the growers with no workers, which allowed the union to effect changes as the growers became desperate for U.S. farm workers. The Chicano movement took their civil rights back and worked towards self-determination by improving their financial, social, and political circumstances. This movement did many great things for California and Mexican Americans all over the world. It helped shape California's labor unions to become fair, just, and eliminate barrios. The Chicano movement changed Mexican American politics by paving the way for Chicanos to enter the political arena, and lastly created the land grant movement that restored land for many Mexican Americans.